Lobster is one of those foods that today feels synonymous with luxury, a dish you'd expect to see on the white linen tables of fine dining restaurants, paired with champagne or butter sauces. But here's the surprising truth. Lobster wasn't always a symbol of wealth and status. In fact, in colonial America it was considered cheap and almost embarrassing. It washed ashore in such abundance that it was used as fertilizer and fed to prisoners, who even complained about being forced to eat it too often. Imagine that. What we now pay top dollar for was once considered food for the poor. Yet over the centuries, lobster underwent one of the greatest culinary makeovers in history. By the late 19th century, wealthy city diners discovered its delicate flavor, especially when steamed and served with melted butter, and it began its climb toward becoming the luxury item we know today. By the 1980s, as wild stocks declined and global demand exploded, lobster had cemented its place as an elite export. Strict regulations were introduced to protect the fishery, but one thing never changed. Every lobster is still caught the old way, trap by trap, hand by hand, and always at the mercy of the sea. The story of lobster isn't just about food. It's about survival, weather, tradition, and the dangerous race against time. To see what it really takes to bring lobster from the ocean floor to a dinner plate in New York, Tokyo, or Shanghai, you have to start in coastal towns like Rockland and Stonington, Maine. The day begins not with sunshine but with glowing radar screens. Captains hunch over weather maps as a pressure system forms far away in the South Atlantic. At first it's just a swirl of colors, blue then orange then red, but within hours it becomes a Category 1 hurricane tracking toward the Gulf of Maine. Every lobsterman knows what that means. They have less than 12 hours to retrieve hundreds of traps scattered across the ocean before the storm makes it impossible. Panic doesn't set in. Instead, there's a practiced urgency, the kind only a seasoned fishing community knows. Boats that weren't scheduled to pull traps for another week are suddenly fueled, iced, and readied for immediate departure. Crews scramble to check permits and gear. The math is grim. A single boat may have 700 traps out in the water, some only a few miles from shore, others spread 20 or 30 nautical miles out into open sea. If the storm arrives before they get to them, those traps, and the valuable lobsters inside, are gone. Worse, in this tightly regulated fishery, leaving traps behind isn't just costly, it can mean fines and long-term losses. So the race begins. Before dawn, the boats push off the docks, bows cutting into rising swells. The radios crackle with voices trading buoy coordinates and tide predictions. Nobody says it outright, but everyone knows the truth. If you're not back by nightfall, you're not coming back at all. Out on the water, every trap begins with a buoy, simple floating markers painted in bright, unique colors. Each Maine lobsterman registers their colors with the state, making them as personal as a family crest. Red with a white stripe, green with yellow dots. These aren't decorations, they're identity. And when the seas rise, those tiny flashes of color might be the only sign of your livelihood. Spotting a buoy in calm weather is simple. They bob gently on the surface, visible for hundreds of feet. But in rough seas, waves bury them, tangle them, or drag them off course. It takes sharp eyes and instinct to spot one. The captain throttles down, scanning the horizon, while a crewman leans out over the rail waiting for the brief moment when a flash of paint appears between swells. Once spotted, the boat circles carefully. Too fast and the line might tangle in the propeller. Too slow and the rope could drift beneath the hull. Timing matters. With a gaff hook, the crew snags the rope, drags it on board and hooks it to the hydraulic hauler. The winch growls and the trap begins to rise. On good days, traps come up clean and steady. On storm days, they come up heavy, tangled with seaweed, crabs, or worse, broken ropes with no trap at the end. Each haul is a gamble. When the trap finally slams onto the deck, the crew springs into action. Salt water pours across the boards as lobsters spill out, scrambling with antennae and claws. The next moments are crucial. Every lobster must be measured with a precision gauge. Too small? Back overboard. Too big? Back as well, because those large lobsters are usually breeders that sustain the population. A V-notch on the tail? That's a protected female released without question. The rules are strict, but they keep the fishery alive for future generations. Those that pass inspection are quickly banded with thick rubber to keep them from fighting, then placed into circulating seawater tanks below deck. These tanks are mobile life support systems, constantly monitoring oxygen, salinity, and temperature. A stressed lobster might die before it reaches shore, and a dead lobster can't be sold. Every detail matters because the difference between a premium product and a rejected one is worth thousands of dollars. The rhythm becomes relentless. Haul, measure, band, store, repeat. The crew moves fast, balancing speed with care, as the sea gets rougher and the deck more dangerous. Hours stretch on until every muscle aches, but the traps keep coming. By afternoon, the sky darkens and the storm edges closer. Wind gusts slam the hull broadside, spraying salt water across the wheelhouse windows. Waves grow taller, closer together, more threatening. Inside, the tanks are nearly full. Lobsters churn restlessly, alive but stressed. Any slip in oxygen levels could kill them. That's when the captain makes the call: it's time to leave. Some traps will be lost, but pushing further would risk the entire boat. Engines roar, slicing through whitecaps, racing back to harbor before the storm closes in. Back at the dock, the work doesn't stop. Crates are lifted straight into cold storage. Every lobster is tagged with vessel ID, harvest zone, and time stamp. Inspectors check for cracks, stress, or sluggish movement. The best are packed into oxygenated crates lined with gel packs and moisture regulators, sealed, QR-coded, and logged into tracking systems. Within hours, some shipments are loaded onto planes bound for Tokyo, Shanghai, or Paris, destined for high-end restaurants where customers pay hundreds for a single serving. Others are flash-steamed for 90 seconds, vacuum-sealed, and frozen at -40 degrees Celsius, ensuring flavor is preserved for months. From a stormy sea to a glittering dining room, the journey is a race against time and nature, and this time the lobstermen have won. But the story of luxury seafood doesn't end with lobster. In the tidal flats of the Pacific Northwest lies another delicacy, one that looks nothing like a lobster yet can fetch up to $300 a piece in Asian markets. It's the geoduck clam, pronounced geoduck, and it might be the strangest, most valuable clam on Earth. Long, soft-shelled, and often weighing several pounds, it has been harvested for centuries by indigenous communities in Washington, British Columbia, and Alaska. Its global fame skyrocketed in the 1980s, when demand surged in Japan and China, where geoduck is prized for its sweet flavor and tender texture, often eaten raw as sashimi. Have you ever wondered what it really takes to bring some of the world's most luxurious and unusual seafood to your plate? In fine dining restaurants across the United States and Asia, menus feature exotic delicacies that can cost hundreds of dollars per serving. But behind every elegant dish is a story of mud, cold water, danger, precision, and human determination. Few foods embody this journey better than the geoduck clam and the wild abalone. These two creatures don't just end up on plates by chance. They are hunted, handled, and preserved with painstaking care. And their story reveals just how far people will go for a taste of the ocean's rarest treasures. Known for its bizarre appearance, the geoduck is a mollusk with a long siphon, sometimes called a neck, that can stretch more than 3 feet. Despite looking almost alien, this clam is a prized luxury seafood that can live for more than a century, weigh over 4 pounds, and fetch anywhere between $100 and $300 per piece depending on its size, freshness, and shell condition. Unlike farmed oysters or mussels that grow in cages, geoducks live wild, buried deep in the tidal flats of the Pacific Northwest, where every harvest requires human strength, skill, and timing. There are no machines digging them up, no shortcuts. Just men and women working with water, mud, and their bare hands. The hunt begins at low tide in places like Washington State, British Columbia, and Alaska. As the water pulls back, miles of mud flats are exposed, and it's here that skilled harvesters go to work. They scan the ground not for big obvious shells but for the tiniest of clues. A small dimple in the mud, no wider than a coin, signals the breathing hole of a geoduck hidden below. It's almost like treasure hunting, where the surface gives you just a hint of the prize buried nearly 3 feet down. But time is tight. The tide waits for no one, and crews typically have only 4 to 5 hours before the sea floods back in and makes digging impossible. Armed with GPS devices, tide charts, and years of experience, the crews divide into teams, each with hoses, pumps, and baskets ready for the haul. Geoducks prefer firm, stable mud rather than loose sand or shallow water, so experienced diggers quickly eliminate unproductive zones. And here's a fascinating detail: the deeper the breathing dimple, the larger the geoduck hiding below. Once a site is chosen, high-pressure water lines are run from gas-powered pumps on shore, ready to deliver the force needed to soften the mud. The goal is not to blast the clam itself but to liquefy the surrounding sediment, making it possible to reach down by hand. When the digging starts, everything is a race against time. Water pressure between 70 and 90 psi carves a vertical tunnel through the mud, wide enough for an arm. One harvester holds the hose steady, carefully directing the stream, while another plunges their bare hand deep into the slurry. It's a blind grab. They can't see the clam, they have to feel for it. The shell is fragile, the siphon slippery, and the clam itself can retreat deeper into the mud in seconds if disturbed. Move too slowly and the geoduck escapes. Push too aggressively and the shell shatters, destroying its value. Every successful extraction, which can take 5 to 10 minutes, feels like unearthing buried treasure. Once a geoduck is pulled free, alive and wriggling, it's rinsed in cold seawater and handled with extreme care. Even a small crack in the shell can slash its market value in half. Workers grip only the hard shell, never the soft neck, because the siphon bruises easily. Ironically, that same siphon is the most prized part, sought after by sushi chefs who serve it raw for its crisp, briny sweetness. Harvested clams are placed in aerated holding bins with chilled seawater, where oxygen, temperature, and salinity are tightly controlled to keep them calm and alive. Grading begins right there on the shore. Top-quality geoducks weigh between 1.5 to 2 pounds, have no shell damage, and display full siphon extension. And when it comes to price, both size and appearance matter. A flawless 1.6-pound clam can sell for more than a larger, cracked one, sometimes hundreds of dollars more. Time is everything in this trade. Once graded, the geoducks must be packed quickly before stress affects their texture or shelf life. They are placed in insulated seawater containers with oxygen stones and cooling packs, kept at just above freezing to slow their metabolism. Crates are then loaded into refrigerated trucks and driven to processing hubs, usually within 6 hours of harvest. Real-time temperature loggers track every shipment, because even a slight spike can lead to downgrades or rejection by buyers. At the facility, the clams are placed into closed-loop holding tanks that mimic natural tidal conditions with clean, gently flowing seawater and dim lighting. This allows them to purge sand and stabilize before their next journey. Some geoducks are shipped live, bound for Asia where chefs slice them into delicate sashimi within hours of arrival. Others are processed. These undergo a careful routine. A quick scrub, a flash blanch in boiling water for less than 30 seconds to firm the flesh, and an ice water shock to stop cooking. Workers then remove the shell, trim away inedible parts, and rinse the meat. The siphon and mantle are packed for export, vacuum-sealed, and frozen using rapid individual quick freezing technology that locks in flavor and texture. Each pack carries a QR code showing harvest time, location, and processor ID, allowing chefs and customers to trace its origin all the way back to the mud flat. Within 48 hours, those clams are on planes headed to Tokyo, Seoul, Shanghai, and even high-end restaurants in New York or Los Angeles. By the time it reaches a plate, the geoduck may have traveled thousands of miles, but its crisp, ocean-fresh snap remains. Now shift your attention south, to the rugged and dangerous coasts of Australia, where another seafood delicacy commands staggering prices, the wild abalone. At first glance, an abalone looks unremarkable, little more than a dull shell clinging to rocks. But inside is meat so highly prized that a single animal can fetch over $100 in Asia's luxury markets. Abalone has been revered for centuries in Japan and China, once reserved for emperors and royalty as a symbol of wealth and longevity. Today, Australia is the world's leading supplier of wild-caught abalone, exporting thousands of tons each year, with a dockside value of nearly $150 million annually. Harvesting abalone is a task reserved for licensed divers who risk their lives in icy waters patrolled by great white sharks. There are no nets, no trawlers, no machines. Just a diver, a blade, and their own lungs. Before entering the water, crews use sonar, GPS mapping, and years of experience to locate productive reefs. Only specific cold, wave-battered zones provide the right habitat. Each boat operates under strict quotas, with divers required to log exact GPS coordinates and weights to prevent overharvesting. When the sea is calm enough to work, divers descend into freezing water that can be below 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Visibility is often limited to a few feet, and the rocky reefs are covered with seaweed and kelp. Somewhere hidden among the rocks are the abalone, clinging tightly to stone with muscular feet that form a vacuum seal. They cannot simply be plucked off. Divers use a curved blade called an abalone iron to slide under the shell without damaging it or the meat inside. A careless move can break the shell and slash its value. Each abalone is slipped into a mesh bag strapped to the diver's waist. Modern bags even include digital scales, so divers can track weight in real time and avoid exceeding their legal limit. Every dive is dangerous and exhausting, but each piece represents significant value. Once back on the boat, the catch is immediately sorted, rinsed, and graded. Premium abalone weigh between 250 and 450 grams with uncracked shells. Those too small to pass a special shell gauge are returned to the sea alive, ensuring the sustainability of future harvests. For divers, sustainability isn't just a policy, it's survival for their livelihoods. Processing begins as soon as the catch reaches land. In facilities certified for global export, live abalone are inspected once more and placed in oxygenated crates for live shipment. Others are flash frozen, vacuum sealed, and labeled with traceable QR codes that allow chefs to know exactly which diver and reef the abalone came from. Within hours, live shipments are on planes to Hong Kong, Tokyo, and Seoul, where they are served raw as sashimi. Frozen exports head to markets across North America, East Asia, and the Middle East, maintaining perfect quality thanks to an unbroken cold chain at -22 degrees Celsius. Think about that for a moment. A creature that clung silently to a reef in Tasmania just days before could be resting on fine china in a luxury restaurant halfway around the world, still delivering its signature sweetness in a single bite. The journey is extraordinary, requiring precision, risk, and patience at every stage. What ties these stories together? The geoduck clam from the tidal flats of Washington and the abalone from Australia's icy reefs, is the reminder that luxury seafood is not just food. It's a blend of tradition, danger, timing, and craftsmanship. These creatures aren't mass-produced in factories. They're hunted by hand, carried through delicate cold chains, and delivered alive or perfectly preserved so that chefs can transform them into unforgettable dishes. Every pristine bite on a restaurant tablecloth represents hours of grueling work and the skill of people who race against nature itself. So the next time you see an elegant seafood dish served at a high-end restaurant in New York, San Francisco, or Tokyo, remember the hidden journey behind it. Remember the divers risking sharks, the harvesters racing the tide, the processors guarding every degree of temperature. Luxury doesn't start in the kitchen. It starts in the sea, in mud, on reefs, and in the silent work of hands reaching for something most of us will never see in the wild. And that's exactly what makes these foods so rare, so valuable, and so unforgettable.